A threat of a chaotic gathering has police mobilizing and on alert. How this is affecting their ability to keep you safe citywide with them already spread thin.
It is a crisis at this point.
State school leaders blame their web vendor for posting test score data that was later redacted. The pushback from that vendor that's raising questions.
Are there gangs in Baltimore City?
Yes, definitely.
In an exclusive interview with Fox 45 News, a former gang member tells us how gangs are fueling the cycle of youth violence and his fight to break it. Zay Flowers lands in Baltimore.
It's going to be an explosive offense.
We bring you our one-on-one interview with the Ravens' new wide receiver.
This weather maker sticking around into the weekend, the hour-by-hour impact on your plans and when sunshine returns.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Well, the onslaught of rain continues across the state. We're tracking storms from the eastern shore to the mountains out west. Fox 45 News is following this weather maker and how it could put a damper on your weekend plans. Good evening, I'm Kai Jackson. More April showers on the final weekend of the month, and we're not done yet. Let's go right to meteorologist Jasmine Lomax. Jasmine.
Thanks, Kai. It's been a very, very soggy Friday. We started with rain, and we're still seeing showers move across the state. We've got an area of heavy rain now along the eastern shore. For the rest of us, we're seeing spotty showers, and the rain will continue over the next few hours, lasting into early tomorrow morning. We've already seen very high rainfall totals, greater than half an inch in many locations. We've even had reports of over an inch. The rainfall totals will increase tonight and then again on Sunday as we get ready for another round of rain and possible storms. Again tomorrow, we start with rain, then we dry out heading into the afternoon, but rain and storms return on Sunday. That's followed by a nice and dry day on Monday.
Unfortunate thing because this was never acceptable. You know, even in the streets, this was 100% unacceptable. No women, no kids.
Well, don't miss Mackenzie Frost's exclusive story coming up at 10:30. Fox 45 News presses city leaders on failing math scores within Baltimore City schools and the allegations the State Department of Education tried to cover up some of those scores. Now, in February, Project Baltimore broke the story of 23 city schools with 0 students proficient in math among those tested. This week, school leaders addressed the issues before the city council. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor has the story.
Over the course of a nearly 2 hours long hearing where alarming math scores was meant to be the main subject among the many questions asked.
I feel a lot of anxiety and concern about particularly safety.
Talk about math only entering the equation.
0 in math, how do we change that?
So how are you all addressing that immediate need?
Math is still a complicated subject.
I'm going to switch back to math now.
A handful of times.
My thought was same old, same old.
Political analyst John Deedy criticizing the questions asked by members of the city council, many of which
We've had a bad couple of months for adolescents in our city as it relates to violence.
surrounded student safety, summer programs, and broad discussions about issues inside city schools.
They didn't bear down on it because they didn't have an answer to the problem. And, you know, it's always like, well, let's spend more money. Let's have more tutors. And the thing is, we've seen that hasn't really solve the problem at all.
Dee calling it a missed opportunity to demand new solutions. Meanwhile, City Schools CEO Dr. Sonia Santelises is blaming pandemic-related learning loss. To close the gap, she says city schools have bolstered tutoring opportunities and strengthened after-school programs. However, the effectiveness of those steps has yet to be assessed. Fox 45 sending city schools the questions Dee says city leaders should have been requesting themselves, asking, when were those steps implemented and how will you measure whether they're working? How long until math scores are expected to improve? And who do you hold accountable? We've received no response.
Unfortunately, they don't want to address the elephant in the room, and they really should have focused on it more.
Dee adds not only was a majority of the conversation off topic, the conversation itself was long overdue. Fox 45's Project Baltimore investigation uncovering 23 city schools with 0 students testing proficient in math nearly 3 months ago.
I think they lack a sense of urgency, and I have no idea why they're not doing something except for the fact of they don't have a clue what to do.
Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
Fox 45 News is questioning why the State Department of Education is redacting some of the scores online. MSDE recently removed some test results from its site, telling Project Baltimore the changes were made to protect student privacy. But some call it a cover-up. Today, the Maryland Public Policy Institute sent a letter to the Maryland Inspector General for Education calling for an investigation.
We called on the Inspector General to act because something is rotten at MSDE. The Department of Education is hiding something, and we don't know why they're hiding this data and what it indicates about what else they could be hiding.
Well, the Maryland Public Policy Institute sent a similar letter in 2021 regarding Fox 45's coverage of ghost students. Those calls were met with an investigation that uncovered millions of misused tax dollars. MSDE is blaming its own web vendor for posting embargo test scores before they could be redacted. Well, tonight, the web vendor claims that's not true. Project Baltimore digs into their comments and who they say actually posted the scores. It's coming up in 5 minutes. Governor Wes Moore told Fox 45 News on Thursday he was not made aware by MSDE or State Superintendent Dr. Muhammad Chowdhury that the data was being changed.
Governor Moore, did you know that the State Department of Education was going to be redacting the test scores? Do you support that decision, especially when it comes to Baltimore City schools, many of which we know are doing very poorly? 23 schools had 0 students proficient in math.
No, we did not. And one thing that I know that we want to be able to work on and address is making sure that we have a world-class public education system is imperative. Everything that we are trying to accomplish, we need to have a world-class public education system to help us to get there. The fact that there is not the level of coordination between the Department of Education and the governor's office is something that needs to be fixed. It's something that needs to be addressed, where it is an independent body.
The governor was questioned on the topic again today on WBAL radio.
I said, and I stand by the idea that we also have to make sure there's a greater level of coordination of what's happening between MSDE and the governor's office, where MSDE is an independent agency. It's an independent standalone agency with its own board and its own accountability measures. I understand that. I respect that. I also, though, know that what is going to be incredibly important in all of this is that measure of partnership that we are excited to engage in.
The president of the State Board of Education, Clarence Crawford, told Fox 45 News that he didn't know the data was being changed. Today, Fox 45 sent both President Crawford and Governor Moore an email asking when they became aware the data was removed and redacted from the website. We also asked how they became aware. We're still waiting for their responses. That brings us to our question of the day. Do you trust current state and local leadership to fix the problems in Baltimore City public schools? So far, 97% of those who voted say no. Make your voice heard by going to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Still ahead on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, we have an update from Project Baltimore about redacted standardized test scores. Fingers are being pointed at the web vendor for posting embargoed data, but the web vendor is now pushing back. Racing is set to resume at Laurel Park after a recent run of devastating injuries and deaths to horses, what an inspection has discovered. And coming up at 10:30 tonight, a Fox 45 News exclusive. A former gang member shares a personal story of how young people are easily caught up in a life of crime and his advice for the city. Tonight, yet another twist in a Project Baltimore investigation that's raising questions over why state test results were posted online, then removed and redacted. Project Baltimore's Chris Pass explains the State Department of Education blamed its web vendor for posting embargoed data, but tonight, that web vendor says they didn't do it.
On April 20th, the Maryland State Department of Education posted this 3-page statement to its website. The statement was issued in response to Project Baltimore's investigation, exposing how MSDE changed the way it reports student test scores to the public, redacting much of the data. In the statement, MSDE blamed its web vendor, the Canton Group, for publishing embargoed data before it could be redacted to protect student privacy. MSDE's statement said, Mr. Pabst gained access to the embargoed data that was prematurely posted by the MSDE web vendor. But now, the Canton Group is responding, saying that is not true. The group says it did not post the data, but it knows who did. According to the web vendor, it was the Maryland State Department of Education. This all started in January when Project Baltimore downloaded state test scores that were posted on MSDE's website. Shortly after Fox 45 News began reporting on the data, MSDE removed the results from its website. But remember, Project Baltimore already had the data, and in early February, we reported that 23 Baltimore City schools had 0 students among those tested score proficient in math. A few weeks later, in mid-March, MSDE reposted the data to its website, but this time, many of the results were replaced with asterisks. MSDE, under State Superintendent Mohammed Chaudhry, issued this 3-page statement blaming the Canton Group for prematurely posting the data in January. Now, the Canton Group has issued this statement refuting MSDE's claims, saying an individual with MSDE, under the direction of supervisors at MSDE, published the information in question on January 19th, 2023, after a full approval process. Project Baltimore reached out to the Maryland State Department of Education for a reply to this letter from the Canton Group. We will keep you updated on this developing investigation. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Project Baltimore will have more on this story in the coming days. There are many unanswered questions that remain. If the web vendor says it didn't post the data, then who did? And why was the web vendor blamed? You can see all of our reports and read the full statement from the Canton Group on our website, foxbaltimore.com. You know, it's always nice to come home to Flowers. And today, wide receiver Zay Flowers arrived in his new home. Morgan Adsit joins us right now. Morgan, you even had a chance to speak with the newest Raven.
Yeah, very impressive for a rookie, and very few first-round draft picks walk into the perfect situation. A talented and stacked team with no real weight of the world's shoulders yet on him. But that's what this Ravens have the luxury to do with wide receiver Zay Flowers. Thanks to that Lamar Jackson 5-year extension, a brand new offense with all the talent returning and those they brought in, that Flowers has officially joined. What a welcome for the Boston College graduate at 22nd overall. Zay Flowers officially introduced today by the Ravens. Flowers viewed as one of the best wide receivers in the class. He may be 5'9", but he's a talent that plays much larger. His senior season at Boston College, 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. He can play inside out, has speed and physicality to get off the line of scrimmage as well.
It was clear cut, it was a knockout victory this week. Everybody thought that Zay would bring the most to the table for us this year.
In my opinion, I feel like I could play outside, inside, special teams, wherever you need me to make a play. If I could touch the ball any type of way to try to make a play, I feel like I would be good in where it is.
100%. Everybody had him as our guy, and for him to be there for us and just kind of fill out that room was a great blessing.
The Ravens will be on the clock, barring any trade, a little bit tonight in the third round. In about probably 10, 15 minutes, 86 overall could be happening, and I will have that for you when Sports Unlimited continues.
Thank you, Morgan. Horse racing resumes tomorrow at Laurel Park after 2 horses were euthanized following catastrophic injuries last week. On Tuesday, the Maryland Horse Racing Commission held an emergency meeting to assess the track's safety. The track has previously been blamed for injuries to horses. Just this month, 5 horses had to be put down. An agreement has been reached to bring in a consultant. Next on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock, signs of COVID winding down in Maryland, why a vital pandemic tracking tool is changing.
A standoff over America's spending habits, pitting the president against Republicans. I'm Scott Thuman in Washington with a look at what's creating this financial crisis and how it can still be avoided.
It has been a very rainy start to the weekend. We started the day with rain, and even as we head into the night, we are still tracking showers across the state. We even have some areas of heavy rain, all associated with our next weather maker. I'll let you know when the rain finally ends and how much rain we could see this weekend in my Weather Authority forecast.
Wall Street surges as markets close for the month. The Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P all up more than 0.5% Friday. This comes as both Democrats and Republicans critique how the Fed handled the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. An internal review claims the Fed didn't understand the risk SVB was taking, especially as the Fed raised interest rates. Both Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown and Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina say the Fed failed the American people. Let's go live to Capitol Hill as the debate over America's spending habits continues. The nation is set to hit its debt limit in June, but the president and Republicans are still at a standoff. What's the solution? Chief Political Correspondent Scott Thuman explains.
Anyone looking to Washington these days for unity may want to keep searching. The fight over America's finances exposing the party divide. Despite President Biden's stern threat to veto any GOP bill that raises the debt ceiling if combined with spending cuts elsewhere, did nothing to deter House Republicans who defied Capitol Hill odds and passed the bill anyway, possibly gaining leverage and putting pressure on the Senate and president to negotiate.
Neither side gets 100% of what they want. They have to sit down and work out a deal somehow. That's how our democracy works. And the president doesn't want to do that.
What we have seen they've put together is an agenda, an extreme MAGA wish list.
Conservative political ads piling on Democrats.
They voted against saving billions in unspent COVID funds, rejected cutting red tape to lower your costs, and even voted against reducing America's debt, keeping us reliant on China.
While Republicans say they've conceded plenty, a proposal to raise America's borrowing limit almost $1.5 trillion, which amounts to somewhere around $4,400 for every American.
Well, from here, it's just going to be horse trading and deal making and name calling, most likely. Both sides just need to do the best thing for you young people, right? 50 trillion in debt around the next generation is just unbearable.
And complicating efforts for a bipartisan solution, uncertainty in the Senate, with Democratic Senator Joe Manchin under duress to side with the GOP, especially now that West Virginia's popular Republican governor has decided to challenge Manchin for his seat in 2024. And it does now fall in the Senate's lap. But again, President Biden insists he wants that debt ceiling raised without negotiation, and then he'll talk budget cuts. On Capitol Hill, I'm Scott Thuman.
See, this was never acceptable, even in the streets.
A former gang member says things have gotten more violent than ever in Baltimore. In an exclusive interview, how he got out of the life and is trying to help other young people do the same. And one presidential hopeful says President Biden won't live through a second term. Biden addresses those comments. All right, more NFL news. Just in, the Ravens select Clemson linebacker Trenton Simpson with their third-round pick, 86 overall. Simpson joins wide receiver Zay Flowers, selected last night. Morgan Adson will have much more on the pick in a few minutes. Well, as we mentioned, a rainy start to the weekend is showing no signs of slowing down right now. Meteorologist Jasmine Lomax is here with this weathermaker. Jasmine, I know some people have been complaining about allergies. Is it possible this rain will knock some of the pollens out of the air?
It certainly could. It's going to be a very gloomy next few days as we continue to deal with rain, not just tonight, but we've also got more on the way early tomorrow morning, and then the rain continues on Sunday, so really having a big impact on your weekend plans. We're keeping track of showers moving across the state. Most of us are seeing isolated, spotty showers, but we are seeing some areas of heavy rain along the eastern shore. That's where we have those reds and oranges indicating that heavy rain. This will continue over the next several hours as we continue to deal with this weather maker. We've already seen rainfall totals greater than half an inch in many locations, over an inch in Frederick, according to our radar estimate, and these numbers will increase overnight. Then more rain is on the way for Sunday, and we could see totals greater than 3 inches. I'll let you know how long the rain lasts and the timing coming up in my Weather Authority forecast. Back to you.
In a story you'll see only on Fox 45 News, former gang member Ted Sutton opens up about his time roaming Baltimore streets. But he says the violence in Baltimore now is different than what he experienced before turning his life around.
When I was in the street, there were rules. And so, no, you could not sell, a person couldn't sell drugs in front of a school. No, you didn't disrespect the elderly, and you try to protect them.
Well, gangs seem to be an issue across Baltimore, but city leaders don't often talk about it. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost looks into what's been said and what could come next.
We wanted to talk to people who have had this lived experience. And when we talked with Ted Sutton, he says a lot of this comes down to people, and especially young people, wanting to feel protected. So far, everyone but the mayor and police commissioner are willing to say that Baltimore has a gang problem.
I feel I was built for this.
Ted Sutton knows the streets of Baltimore.
Caught up with one of the rougher groups here. I ended up gravitating to a group, to not just friendship, but it ended up being a level of protection being so young.
Those groups gripping the city now, decades later. Are there gangs in Baltimore City?
Yes, definitely. Gangs have become a family for some youth who have had coming from some broken homes, and also for some, they have felt there's been a level of protection.
Sutton says he's seeing more kids get involved because they feel a sense of belonging, but the level of violence and brazenness has reached new heights.
So they even doing wrong. I see that, when you have a lack of even rules, even in the streets.
We're seeing grandmothers getting killed and children getting shot.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest with you, that is the most unfortunate thing, because this was never acceptable. Even in the streets, this was 100% unacceptable. No women, no kids, and they are never to be, harmed. Now you have some people who pretty much are saying, well, since he's younger, he probably will get less time, so maybe we may let him watch, where the drugs are.
That is exactly what families have been telling Fox 45 News.
Ran out, like I said, to the streets of Baltimore City.
The family of 12-year-old Jalen Richards, who was gunned down in South Baltimore.
They still was dragging my baby to the streets because he was a minor.
Or Patty Hawkins, a mom who moved her son away from the gang's gravitational pull.
It's easier to have children sell drugs for you than you to get a charge yourself to sell drugs. For me to know that my son was struggling with keeping himself out of a gang and didn't know how to communicate with me, that really hurt.
Back in the streets of Baltimore, the violence unrelenting. But the city doesn't hear their leaders call out the problem. But we never hear the mayor or the police commissioner ever come out and say, we're dealing with a gang problem in the city. Why do you think that is?
Well, one is no city wants to ever admit they have a gang problem.
When Fox 45 News asked U.S. Attorney for Maryland Eric Barron about gangs, not shying away from admitting the issue.
Gangs are certainly a driver of violence in the city. There's no doubt about it. I don't care what we call them. There are organized groups, whether we want to call it gangs or enterprises or whatever. When you got two or more people working together, that's going to be more of a driver of violence if they're involved in wrongdoing.
Back under the cover of rain, Sutton says it's a cycle of fear and violence that he's working to break.
To have a second chance.
Especially working with young people, trying to get them to think about their actions before it's too late.
And then you end up, being the one to take his life and then regretting it for the rest of your life. When you take away hope from a person, you create the perfect criminal.
Do you have hope for Baltimore City?
I actually do. People can change. I wear it, to let them know, that God could turn a mess into a miracle. I think that's what gives me hope about this city, because I'll look at them and say, you wasn't as bad as me, but if I can change, I know you can change.
Now, the U.S. Department of Justice has a specific definition when it comes to what is a gang. We've put more information about that, as well as a definition for youth gangs in this story on our website at foxbaltimore.com. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
The U.S. Attorney for Maryland, Eric Barron, who was in Mackenzie's story, tells Fox 45 News he and other partners will soon announce new initiatives to his battle against violence in Baltimore City. That includes a new violent and organized crime section of the U.S. Attorney's Office, a focus on gun cases that violate the federal school zone statute, and an Al Capone method of prosecution, which targets repeat violent offenders by taking them off the street for any and all wrongdoing. Well, now Barron says this model is growing. The Baltimore Police Department is not the only agency dealing with a staff shortage affecting crime in the city. The state's attorney's office has not been at full capacity, suffering major losses during Marilyn Mosby's tenure. Fox 45's Vincent Hill has more on whether bringing in outside help will ease the workload for these prosecutors. Vincent?
Yeah, Kai, it's a rare move, usually reserved for high-profile cases, calling in private attorneys to serve as special prosecutors. One legal expert says for Baltimore City, it could work only if done properly.
Today, justice for a Baltimore City family.
Never in my life did I ever think that somebody would come knocking on my door, taking my child away from me.
Deontay Belcher was killed in 2020. His body left in the woods. His killer, James Reddick, handed down his fate.
The judge imposed a sentence of life without parole, plus life, plus 20.
Belcher's murder happened in Cambridge. Dhruv Vignaraja, a private Baltimore City attorney, called in a special prosecutor, a first-of-its-kind case in Maryland.
This is an idea that needs to be on the table in places where we have far too much crime and not enough prosecutors to do the work.
In Baltimore, on City State's Attorney Ivan Bates' first day in office, 139 assistant state's attorneys were sworn in. But according to Bates, that's not enough.
I need more prosecutors. We're going to have to win cases.
With homicides at 86 and non-fatal shootings closing in on 200, Bates acknowledging his prosecutors are stretched thin.
We talk to prosecutors, and they're carrying 50, 70, 80. I've heard 106 gun violent cases.
So, would Ivan Bates be open to the idea of bringing in outside help? Former prosecutor for the City State's Attorney's Office, Jeremy Eldridge, says it's already been considered.
A lot of suggestions were floated during the campaign, and one of them was the idea of bringing in private practitioners.
Eldridge believes there's an upside to the idea.
The advantage is that you're filling the vacancies, and that you would have what you would like to think are experienced lawyers coming in to prosecute cases.
A practice he says existed at the state's attorney's office before being shut down.
Going back to the 1970s, some prosecutors at that point were actually allowed to have practices, and Kurt Schmoke, when he won, was actually the prosecutor who eliminated that.
Eliminated, Eldridge says, because of concerns of ethical violations.
You can't have a clean and reliable prosecution model where prosecutors have side hustles.
Ivan Bates hasn't commented on whether he plans to bring in outside help, but Eldridge warns against it, despite the backlog of cases.
Having been a prosecutor in Baltimore City and being a defense attorney now, the juice simply isn't worth the squeeze.
Now, we did reach out to the state's attorney's office to find out just how short-staffed they are when it comes to prosecutors. We have not yet heard back. For now, we're live in Baltimore. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
All right, Vincent, thank you. Well, the Baltimore Ravens have had to wait, but finally made another pick. Here's Morgan Adson with the latest Raven. Or Morgan, how does this factor into the dynamic? First offense, now a defensive pick.
Yeah, we're going defense. The Ravens stay put once again, too, with their second pick of the 2023 NFL Draft. This is a long wait on day 2. They had no second-round pick. So in the third round at 86 overall, the Ravens drafted Clemson inside linebacker Trenton Simpson. Some think he should have been drafted higher, so this could be best player available. Can't pass up on the value. 6'2", 235, nice speed for size. Last season, his junior year, 73 tackles and 2.5 sacks. He's played inside and outside backer at Clemson, so unsure if he's an edge project or if the Ravens will indeed try to move on from Patrick Queen at some point in this calendar year. Kai?
All right, Morgan, thank you. And let's take a look right now at the Fox box on the top left. The U.S. Army is grounding all aviation units after 2 deadly crashes within the past month. On Thursday, 2 helicopters collided in Alaska, killing 3 soldiers. On the top right, a faulty underground cable caused a manhole to explode in New Jersey, starting a fire that spread to 3 cars. A police officer nearby was hurt trying to direct traffic. He was taken to a hospital. On the bottom left, a Texas man is arrested for shooting an alleged scammer over $40. Police say Eric Aguirre paid someone for parking, then left during a dinner date to go outside and shoot the man when he learned he'd been scammed. On the bottom right, Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley takes shots at President Biden's age. He'll be 82 during the 2024 election, and Haley says he won't make it another 4 years if he's reelected. Biden brushed off the comments.
I respect them taking a hard look at it. I take a hard look at it as well. I took a hard look at it before I decided to run. And I feel good. I feel excited about the prospects. And I think we're on the verge of really turning the corner in a way we haven't in a long time.
Well, be sure to sign up for News on the Go. Go to foxbaltimore.com and click on Mobile Alert Sign Up under the Station tab. You can also download the Fox 45 app for your smartphone. Search WBFF in your app store. Well, still ahead, ghost guns growing in popularity across the country, how criminals may be taking advantage of a federal loophole. A new report accuses a Supreme Court justice's spouse of doing business with the company related to one of his cases, the latest ethics controversy facing the court.